Rob, can I start with you first, please?
Rob Wilson, alternate.
Catherine Brennan, alternate.
Rich Rita, select board ex officio.
Morgan Dean, member.
John Racine, member.
Bill Spence, member.
Rick Smith, alternate.
Mike Capel, member.
Margaret Turner, alternate.
Nancy, can you hear us?
Yes, Nancy Knight, member.
Okay.
Hey, John, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I didn't see you there.
Alan Burko, alternate.
Okay, oh, there you are. I didn't see your name up there.
There's
It's
no
not
name.
up there.
Thank you,
Not
Alan.
up there.
No
He's
name.
that
It
little
says Josh Gray.
picture.
No, it
No,
says
he's above
Josh.
it. Okay. He's above
Oh,
it.
no, that Alan's the photograph.
Yes, he is.
It is.
He's above it. And Jenny
He's not
Lucas, you
using
can
his
hear us
camera.
okay? Okay,
But that's surprising.
I think we're short one member.
We have
You
five.
have to see somebody.
Short two. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
With 5 here, Nancy
Seat
makes
two.
6.
Nancy,
So you
six.
get 1.
All right, so I'm gonna see Kathy. So to remind everybody, Kathy is already we voted here, the select board suggested she become a member, but she hasn't been sworn in yet.
Right.
So I did put a message out to the swearer inner, and he's gonna call you. So
Okay.
I later on, make sure you give me your phone number so we
Okay.
can send it to him
Okay.
and you can work it out with him, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's,
We need
so,
one other.
no, I think, cause
Nancy.
When Nancy's here.
Could she do this? If
Yes.
she's not sworn in?
She
Yeah.
just can't count as part of the quorum.
Okay.
yeah, she can vote, yep. Okay, let's take a look at the minutes and see what we got here. And don't be afraid, Mr. Secretary, if you have anything to say
Well,
on the
this-
minutes, on the minutes.
yeah, I understand. This appeared in the inbox last night,
I have a question.
so
So then should, under full members in attendance, should I be down under number 2 as an alternate member and then seated? This last meeting. So I'm still not technically a full member.
They can just put a.
Am I technically an alternate then?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can
Well-
put appointed, not
because
sworn
I
in.
gave up my seat.
yeah,
Okay,
well, I did seat you.
I think it matters. but-
You're right, so I should, but see how under point 2, it says alternate members in attendance, like Alan Burko seated, Margaret Turner seated, so wouldn't I be also Catherine Brennan seated?
Yes,
Yeah.
it should have been, yes.
Good catch. We have another bill here.
yes, she does a good job.
Yeah, take a few minutes, look it over. See what we think.
I just have one suggestion. That each of these motions. As an example, line 92, where it says draft amendment. You could make that into a sentence, that draft amendment 2, remove the period, change the W from capital to small case, and then it reads as a complete sentence.
Okay,
That's simply for posterity, that when somebody's reading this years later, each of these draft amendments would be amended in that manner. But otherwise, they look okay. Anything else?
Anything else from anyone? Everyone okay?
Mhm.
Okay, let's make a motion on the
Okay.
minutes.
I move to accept the motion, I'm sorry. The motion is to accept the minutes as amended.
I second the motion. I wasn't there.
October 12th.
For October 12th. Thank
Right.
you, Rich. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Do we need to do a roll call in a
Aye.
minute? We're okay,
I don't think so.
we're fine. And Nancy and, you okay?
Yes,
Okay,
they're good.
okay, approved. We'll move on. Last time we were here, there were a few people that were not here for rules and regulations. And Mr. Capel, I don't believe you were here.
I was not.
I want to make sure you have
I
this,
was traveling.
okay?
Thank you. I think I do have this at home.
Okay, I'm sure everyone took a look at their rules and regulations, so, okay, we're gonna move on. The new member, I just want everyone again, because there were a few people that didn't meet. Rick Smith. He's our new alternate. Good guy, knows stuff, so,
Yes, keep them around.
okay, we're gonna keep him around. Okay, let's go right to the lot line adjustment application. For Brownstone Way. Golden Heights. Last we met, we had to make an adjustment on the map. Does everyone have a little copy of this?
There's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get the big one. Let's see the
Yeah.
big one. That one.
You have one?
You familiar with it?
So if we all remember, there was no, we wanted some structures kind of put on the map that were not there before, to kind of give us an idea of where the buildings were. And the part of the lot that's being transferred had the wrong information on it. It was 0.9, it should have been 0.09, if I remember right.
That's correct.
And that's what we're here for today, to take a look at that correction.
John, I could screen share for the people on Zoom if I had screen sharing permissions from the staff.
Okay, sure, we're gonna get that to you right now, Tara. Hold on.
This was wrong.
That's it?
Try now.
Yeah, that's what it said. So what do they do?
You know what quick claim feed is?
It's not a claim, it is. Yeah, no, nothing, it's like the whole thing.
Not a piece of it.
So what the hell are they changing?
To the other side.
Change it to 0.09.
Point zero, and it was like point nine.
The other part no
Yeah.
longer has any.
But there's what
Quit
quit.
it.
For the folks in the
The property or whatever.
audience, this is the map we're talking about. It's Golden Heights Road. Do we have any discussion that we'd like to?
I'd like just to ask if the submission meets all the requirements for a lot line adjustment, and then move from there.
Yeah, but what are they?
Yeah, it
So,
does.
so Mark had asked me to review it. I'm not sure if you all have my comments.
Yes,
Okay,
we have to look that over. Just give us 1 minute.
Perhaps Tara could summarize them.
Oh, I see. She's giving it to.
Perhaps you could read the first paragraph?
Tara, would you read the first paragraph for us?
Sure,
your-
we're hearing some chit chat. I don't know if it's board members or audience. So you mean the purpose of the requirement for planning board review and approval of a lot line adjustment is limited to ensuring no new lots are created and no lot is caused to be non-conforming. I don't see anything on the plan of concern in that regard. And I listed some changes and corrections that I would recommend prior to recording. So as part of a motion to approve.
So what I'd like to do this morning is approve it. And then make those adjustments before we record it. That's what I would like to do. And before we go any further, any privilege on the floor? Does anyone like to say something or have anything to say, or you okay? You want to talk about something that's coming up a little later, that's fine too, but about this particular. Okay. So, does anyone see anything that would hold us up other than that?
I haven't seen Tara.
Okay, so take a look at it.
I thought when that was approved, there was no curb cut here, so we're approving the curb cut. John, my brain is, I'm getting old. Their driveway, was that always going over to Golden Heights? Or is that new?
That was,
No,
that was recommended by the town staff. Because of the difficulty to enter from Brownstone.
Sure, which I understand, I understand.
Yeah.
So, but that is actually part of what we're approving.
No, we're not. We're just approving a lot line change.
the one with the little, all the
I
lines.
understand, but at one point where it says proposed driveway. Are we gonna have to approve that change as
No.
well, or
No.
is that just a given?
Is staff.
It's already,
That's a staff approval?
Done deal.
Yeah.
It's the road agent.
The only thing we're approving is that,
But no, we don't have to make that thing, the town or whomever.
no, just a lot line
The
adjustment.
town or whoever can approve that without our having to
The
worry
road
about it.
agent.
Okay,
Mike, this is Jenny. It's in the deed for both of our lots, that's where the
Okay.
driveway is.
hi Jenny,
Hi.
I didn't see you there.
so we requested as a board last time for the few little adjustments, the building on the lot, so we can get an idea of where that is. And to change that acreage number.
Mhm.
0.09. I believe that was the only few items.
Right. Big amount.
I'd like to, if there's no other questions about this, I'd like to make a motion, someone make a motion for me so we can.
I move that we accept the proposed transfer.
Lot
Line adjustment.
That's it.
I move we approve the proposed lot line adjustment.
Subject to the corrections proposed by Tara.
Well, you guys, one of them is a question. So you need to maybe address the question before you put it as a condition, because Brownstone Way, I don't know, is that a right of way for a road or a driveway easement?
Right.
Number 4 is a question.
There's number 4, can I address number 4,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? At the top of Golden Heights Road, the town has a hammerhead,
Yes.
but it's just for the turnaround of town vehicles at the end of the road. The rest of Brownstone Way is a right. It's not a town maintained road.
And I don't think that the zoning setback is specific to that. It's any road right of way is 35 feet. And it looked to me on the tax map like there's a 40-foot private road right away there. Is that not correct?
It is not a road right of way, it is a driveway.
Okay, all right,
is-
so the
because-
20-foot setback is correct then?
Yes, because there are less than 5 houses in there, so
Yeah,
it was a driveway is what it was considered.
So so I think you want to add as conditions to the approval, my notes 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Read them into the record.
Can I read them? Great, I'm gonna have Morgan read those 1, 3, and 5.
2 can.
1, 2, 3, and 5.
1, 2, 3, and 5.
So 1, the new lot line being created should be labeled with a note like the one being extinguished. 2, the note on the line being extinguished as a property line should be corrected. It reads, quote, former property line to become new limit of right of way. End quote. Unless I am mistaken and the intent is indeed to establish a new limit of the right of way, the note would more correctly read, quote, former property line, in parentheses, limit of right of way, end parentheses, end quote. 3, unless there is something in the deed or covenants that I am not aware of, the Lucas setback along the driveway easement to map 105, lot 10.31C is incorrect. It is drawn at 35 feet as if that was a road right of way versus driveway / utility easement. I believe the setback should be 20 feet concurrent with the edge of the easement. And 5, the plan revision and date are missing.
Okay,
So
That's over here in the
We'll work
corner.
with the applicant to make those changes on the plan before the chair signs it and it gets recorded.
that's our mission to do that.
We
understood.
can vote
Yeah.
on it then.
Do we have a second? I have Mike making the motion. Who had? the
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll do a roll call. All over.
I think you have a discussion.
Can you just
Oh, discuss,
just
yeah.
reread the motion, please, one more time, like that's on the table?
The motion was to approve the lot line adjustment as proposed,
As proposed,
subject to corrections.
subject to corrections as delineated
Criteria.
by
the town
Karen,
planner.
by the town planner.
So there are 4 corrections needed.
Okay.
Yes,
Everyone good with that? Any further discussion on that? We'll just do a roll call vote. So Mike?
yes,
Yes.
John Racine, yes.
Morgan Dean, yes?
Rich Rita, yes?
Catherine Brennan, yes?
And
Nancy,
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay,
approved.
approved, unanimous, done.
This is Josh. Just want to say thank you for approving the motion. I didn't receive any of Tara's comments in writing, so could somebody follow up with me after in terms of what I should be doing to amend the plan as per the motion?
Yes, we will get back to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's get down to 2024 zoning amendments. Tara, I know you got a lot of good information on this, so I'm gonna ask you to. Can you bring this up on the screen?
Do you want to talk about last night's first or the
Yeah,
housing one?
let's get last night's over with. I guess.
Not over with till town meeting. Read this.
Since you kind of ran this a little bit last night, can you help us out with that and go forward with it, with the proposed number 1? Tara?
Sure. The First Amendment is almost like a housekeeping one. It's replacing your out-of-date standalone floodplain ordinance with the language recommended by the state floodplain office. And tucking it into the zoning ordinance document with everything else, so we don't lose track of it, and when we do updates, we remember to reach out to them to see if there are any requirements. This is just a requirement to be in the National Flood Insurance Program. And there were no comments on it last night.
Right. None. Anything else? Number 2?
Two is, sorry,
We're simply adopting the language that's been proposed by the state.
Yes.
yes,
No.
Good.
the state floodplain officer, who is our liaison with FEMA.
Who is that? Out of curiosity.
I'm sorry, I forget the new one's last name. Katie something. It was Jennifer Gilbert for the rest of my career, and she recently went on to another job. Katie
Just-
Pate, I think.
I was just curious. I mean,
It's in the
Yeah.
planning office.
okay.
Number 2.
2 is your EV amendment that the working group has been working on the last few months. And would basically make charging stations make clear, I mean, we're treating them as this already, but it would make clear that charging stations for your own use, for your business, for your customers, for your residents is an accessory use like any other accessory use. But that if it's going to be run as a business for other people to come charge up at, it would be a new kind of use that would be permitted in the VC, C1, and SC districts, but only with a special exception in HDR, Rec, and SNOWS.
Mhm.
We talked some about parking in there. If it's kind of common sense in case the question comes up in the future, if it's for your residents, employees, or visitors, we don't need additional parking spaces because we already counted them, but you'd need to take a look at a parking plan and see if more are needed if it's as a business.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I think the working group did a great job.
Mhm.
Looks good.
Yeah, it was a pleasure working with both working groups this year. Felt very collaborative. 3 is hopefully getting less confusing A/SE. This is language to clarify what we meant by that. The first time we wrote it is to create a new thought about what accessory means in this case, that it's not necessarily customarily associated with the thing. It might be a bike race at a ski area, it might be a daycare at a multifamily complex, but it's definitely a secondary use. And if it's the primary use, then it needs a special exception. And I think your one person at the hearing last night didn't follow it, so.
Hmm?
I mean, again, this gives us the anchor in the zoning to deal with the special event issue. The devil in the details are going to be in the special permit that town staff is working on and the ordinance to enact
Sure.
this. So
Right, this fix everything and puts it in there.
I think it'll become clearer once the language for the special permit, don't you, Margaret? Margaret and I were the working group on it with Tara.
I mean, and the main impetus of this is to allow businesses who may not have as much going on in the, what we call the shoulder seasons and that kind of thing, to use their land as a money-making proposition for something that might not be related to
Yeah,
their
not
normal,
customarily.
to their customary,
Right.
you know, approved use that they originally had. Example, tubing on the golf course, you know, that kind of thing, so.
And it'll be regulated by a special permit.
Yeah. I
Well,
think that's,
Rich, I'm not sure this part was clear.
Mhm.
The select board are working on regulations to issue special event permits. So that's why we didn't,
Address it.
we didn't address that, the parameters for that kind of thing in the zoning at all. It doesn't now, and it's not proposed to, because it was the working group spoke with a number of landowners, business owners, and decided to recommend that the best place to do that would be with the select board, because they can act more quickly and get in some of those weeds that the planning board can't.
Right, and the select board was made aware of this amendment and supports it. And has already directed town staff to start working on the language for the permit and for the ordinance for select board's review.
And I think there was one other change. We removed camping
That's
as an example of a special event. And said that again is something that would have to be dealt with the special event application to the select board.
Right, it was kind of the one weed that was in here, so we took it out.
Any other questions? We could move on to the next one.
So 4 and 5 are to address solar and wind, because the zoning ordinance says they're allowed as accessory uses, but doesn't really do anything to make them possible. So in the case of solar, that means being a little more flexible. In the case of wind, it means being a little more cautious. So with solar, first, we're clarifying, you might read this appurtenant structure thing already as saying solar collectors can be on the roof and exceed the height restriction, but we wanted to be deliberate about articulating that. Obviously, the intent wouldn't be for somebody to lower the roof to put solar energy collectors on it. We were expanding the definitions a little bit to say that yes, it's still going to be for on-site use, but on-site might include another lot under the same ownership. There was some discussion last night about whether that needed to be an adjacent lot, and the working group did not say it has to be an adjacent lot, because we didn't really see a need for that. If, you know, say Tyrell owned 2 lots and they owned the one in between 2, right? It's not really going to be a negative impact. We want it, the working group's goal is to encourage use of solar, not make it harder. So the other piece of that would be to let a freestanding solar energy system be 10 feet from the lot line, like you do now for the accessory buildings under 150 square feet.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Everyone's good with that. Any other questions about that? 4 and 5?
No, sir.
Okay. That's it.
So 5 with wind is, again, it's just a different kind of thing. So and it's such a different kind of thing that there's a state law that says, you know, here are some special things you need to do, like have more of a notice period and be realistic about things like height and noise. So The working group spent a lot of time looking at models and examples from other towns and really drilling down into what makes sense in Waterville Valley, because it's a just differently kind of laid out community. You're all in there together rather than a typical New Hampshire town with all the sprawl. And so we wanted to think, how do we encourage wind, but be mindful of the butters on the neighbors. I'm glad Dave is on here. We give him some input along the way. So first thing we did, put in the state definition of small wind energy, which is 100 kilowatts. And that's going to be kind of sized for a big home or big business. Put in the state notice requirement. Thought about setbacks like you would for any tower, which we talk about, we want a fall zone. They don't just fall, pieces break off and bounce a little. So 120 is a really common measure, 120% of the height from roads and property lines. Recognized, we talked a lot about height and decided to just put that in the hands of the zoning board to do on a case-by-case basis with a special exception. Noise, again, because it's a densely developed community, we went with the lowest noise allowed by the state. The lowest noise levels, 45 decibels. I think the charts list 50 as kind of background music or conversation, and since we're talking about at the property line, you don't necessarily want to hear your neighbors' conversations or background music, so that seemed to make sense. Some provisions for flicker, because that can really affect some people. Building code and some basic safety, and just incorporated the state's provisions for abandonment by reference. And again, with on-site, again, like the solar, this would include anything under the same ownership. That's the end of that.
Good.
I was surprised that you only had one person, and I'm wondering if you're doing all the same outreach as you usually have, because the last two hearings, your attendance hasn't been on a par with what I've usually seen for you guys. And I'm a little bit concerned if there wasn't much outreach and people don't see this again till they're voting in March, will it come as a surprise? Or was there plenty of outreach and people are just happy with you? You guys would know that, not me.
We did everything that we could. The outreach was the way we were supposed to do it. And I just think that people are busy in their lives. And this happens a lot. They always come in at the last minute and say, what? And then we say, well, where were you? So, Mark, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just recommend that if Tara's gonna do the actual language for the warrant articles, once the warrant articles are drafted, maybe in February as we get closer to town meeting, that you have one more meeting.
Informational meeting.
Yeah,
And just put it out there that this is what's showing up on the.
for an additional meeting.
Mark, I have a
Great
question. Can that be dovetailed to, it cannot,
Don't, no, well.
The bonding
it-
meeting?
Don't.
I'm just
there's
asking
gonna
you.
be way too much.
okay,
in
then,
that
no,
budget
that,
and bond.
Yeah.
I was just
Either
asking the
Do
question.
it as a separate meeting, but up to the board,
Yeah.
however the board wants to do, so.
You could also, if you wanted, I mean, that's one, the two options are to have an informational meeting and January, February, or have a second public hearing on both sets of amendments in January.
Do we have to decide that now?
I do think because the wording of the warrant article is different than than the proposed amendments that you're looking at right now, right? She condenses things. I think it's important to get the voters to understand what they're voting.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
For sure.
something that has caused confusion in the past, because Tara and the working groups have done these great explanations, but that isn't what shows up on the warrant.
Mhm.
And so I think taking time in middle to late February, where it's only a few weeks before the vote, and then you can show them, here's the proposed amendment that we discussed, and here's how it's gonna show up on the warrant.
Yeah,
And get that, because some of these are a little bit complicated.
Very tough.
yeah, they are.
Getting two handouts too for that
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, and I try to draft these descriptions with that in mind, but I always want to go over it once more with the warrant in mind. So we'll plan on that in a February informational meeting. And if it's both sets of amendments, we can maybe get some help from North Country Council on outreach with that under the HOP grant too.
Okay. Margaret, you had a question?
Yeah, can we do an informational meeting outside the polling area?
Oh, yeah, that's.
You mean-
Informational table outside.
Well, we'll think about what you have to have the content of these available at the voting place.
We will do the boards that we have done in the past. And we'll figure out with Tara the best way to lay that out.
And can you have a member of the planning board there to answer any questions before people actually went in to
It's up-
vote?
It's really up to the moderator where she will allow that to be.
Yeah, maybe a town council question too.
We'll work that out with Patty, and we have plenty of space over there. So we'll be able to
Handouts would be good too.
handouts.
Yeah, you have to have the content of the amendments right there for the voters. I just worry, I'd ask town council about a member because you don't want to be accused of advocating a vote for, right? That you're not allowed to do. You can't try to influence the vote, so it'd be hard not to look like you were. It's my concern.
I do think though an additional meeting here for the public would be very, very helpful.
Yep.
So we all agree on that.
Yep.
Okay,
So are you ready to vote, to
On
put
these.
these on the ballot?
we are,
Yeah.
we are. Okay, let's make a motion. You're pretty good at that, Bill. Give it a shot.
I move that the planning board vote to approve the inclusion of the 6 proposed amendments,
5.
Five,
5.
sorry. That counts as
Scratch
five.
that.
Put that under, it's not 5 anymore.
That hand was better.
That hand doesn't work for 5 right now.
The 5 proposed amendments as what do we got? Content for the
Town meeting.
zoning amendments proposed, oh, too many words.
For the town warrant.
For the
For the
town.
town,
yeah.
warrant. It's not
Okay,
a town
that-
meeting.
that's where we're
Town
going
meeting.
with this.
The warrants.
The
at
warrant,
town meeting.
okay, so we propose to accept the 5 amendments as delineated in whatever you want to call them,
Packet.
Tara's suggestions for zoning amendment warrants at the next town meeting.
Did you get that, Alicia? Figured it out.
Yeah, it'll be,
Let's hang on for a second.
It's,
Sorry, she's got that.
It is technically, I think, town meeting, but it's the voting. It's the ballot voting. It's not a discussion at town meeting. I just want to make that plain.
You okay,
Right.
Sarah?
But there is
Let's try
discussion
again.
prior to voting.
No,
No, there isn't.
There
That's
is
right.
not.
Because
There
it's
isn't.
because there's ballot.
That's all I'm trying to say.
It's
Right.
the ballot.
We got
We
the
got it.
language.
We'll work out we understand
Right.
what
It's
Well,
ballot.
it's-
It's not
it's
just-
trying to-
that.
Yep.
Into,
Which I don't
we'll,
mind.
we'll have.
Think-
I will second it.
All right, Morgan seconded it. Any further discussion on that? Let's do a roll call vote. Kathy, we'll start with you and come around.
Catherine Brennan, yes.
Katrina, yes.
Morgan, yes?
John Racine, yeah.
Bill Spence, yes.
Mike, yes.
And Nancy?
Nancy, yes.
Okay, unanimous. Move on. Good one. Next. Before I go any further, any privilege of the floor, anyone else have anything to say?
You've got the housing. amendments.
Yep, we're going. Oh,
We'll stay on the amendment roll.
Oh,
We have
yeah.
Other amendments.
yep. Tara, the housing. We're gonna take a little quick look at that. Can you, take the lead on that? I missed that, 'cause I didn't see it. Oh,
It's down below.
Down below.
oh, that's why. Do we want to approach that now?
Might as well do all the, it's
These are additional amendments.
zoning amendments, might as
Yeah,
well.
okay,
That are being proposed for town meeting.
okay.
Right. It was, in my mind, part of 24 zoning amendment. So,
This is numbers 6 and 7, are they not?
mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
I
I
missed
think
that too.
Eat them to death.
We separated it into 2 parts.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think you have a motion to make. Most people want to discuss it.
Oh, sorry.
Here I am,
Margaret.
yeah.
Sorry,
Just a-
Margaret. Go
Just a
ahead.
question. Have we had an official public hearing on these? I know we had-
No, today is to talk about the wording and decide if you're ready to have a public hearing.
We might privilege of the floor, people might be here to talk about this.
Yeah,
So my name is Leslie Rosenward. I'm from Village Condominium. And these are many of my owners. And we are here today to really listen to what the proposal is for employee housing and what the Sonoras are proposing, where they want to put it.
okay,
All right,
okay.
thanks.
That's coming up shortly, so bear with us. Thank you. So Tara, let's go forward with the housing.
So these are the amendments that we started months ago with a North Country Council audit of the zoning ordinance to identify opportunities to increase housing opportunity in town. Whittled the list down tremendously to what you felt would be a good fit with the community, did a voter survey and landed on 2 just kind of minor tweaks, really, to look at setbacks on parking, but also to add a density bonus to the cluster. So that's what you ran by the public in a public meeting recently, not a public hearing, just here's what we're thinking about. I think you had about half a dozen people. I don't know what you guys heard after. I didn't hear any pushback during the meeting. I heard more like, gosh, is this all we can do? We really need employee housing. So I went ahead and put zoning amendment language to those concepts that we'd been talking about. And this is really the first draft that you guys have been looking at on these in terms of language. So amendment 1 is to get rid of that, what I think of as a penalty for people that abut the LDR, would get rid of this extra 15 feet setback for HDR that are, about the LDR. And that's amendment 6, does that with, accessory structures and the regular setback. So that's what Amendment 6 is doing, is getting rid of that penalty for people in the VC and HDR that abut the LDR.
It was also one of the arguments that I thought was acceptable during that public meeting session was doing this for the sake of consistency.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That's a
what
good
jumped,
argument.
what Kayla had brought up that I hadn't even thought about in those terms really, that it was making the setback bigger than it was in LDR.
Yes.
Yeah. Consistency argument is really just in my mind.
I think on both these amendments, we discussed them over several meetings. We've had a public meeting. Why not bring it to the public at a public hearing
I
at this
agree.
point, unless someone has a real
I
objection?
would,
But I like to hear
Right.
the warrant language that Tara's come up with, but I think we should just move along.
Okay.
Agreed.
And again, today's to approve the language that you'd put out for a public hearing.
Right. That's what I meant. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Tara.
Margaret has a hopping hand up.
Yes, Margaret.
This is when we have the public hearing. I think it would be a really good idea to point out those areas on the zoning map where you have a different zoning right next to each other that
Yeah.
would be affected by this.
Yeah.
So for instance, I live out West Branch Road. Everything out there is low density residential. Everything that abuts is basically low density residential.
Mhm.
But there are some other areas that the public needs to know about that this could potentially affect.
Yes.
We'll work with Tara if it's all right, and we'll mark up a small version of the zoning map
Yeah.
That'd be great.
that highlights.
Mhm.
which
Where this will be affected.
Yeah, she had maps already that
Yeah.
demonstrated that for us.
Yeah.
last
Yeah,
time.
they-
exactly.
they work, yeah.
Again, a handout would.
Yeah, we'll make that some sort of.
Yeah, we have a 8.5 by 11 zoning map that would be easy to go over it with the Adobe highlighter and mark those boundaries.
Sounds good. Yeah. Very good. Any further discussion, Tara? Anything else to go on?
Ready
Move on.
for 7?
Yeah.
So 7 was kind of a new thought I had, and you guys discussed it and agreed to run it by the public at that public meeting of kind of a tiered setback for the VC so that it serves more like a transitional district. So it's got right now a 35-foot setback, but that's not really in line with some of the things you want to see in the VC and parts of the VC. So the idea would be leave it as 35 if it's across the street from a residential district, but let it be 20 feet if it's across from the C1 or VC, or 25 from the SC, so that think of it like a chameleon district. It's gonna have the front setback of the thing it's across the street from. And I count on a couple of you for the wordsmithing. This is my first draft of this language. I'd like to get some feedback on it, whether it makes it clear. Dave, won't make it clear for you issuing building permits.
I hate to ask this question, but one entity which would clearly be affected by this, sir. I'm
Mike,
just asking. Oh, I can't ask him.
Yeah, let's,
Okay,
Keep it general.
You're just getting the language now to have the public hearing.
yeah,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the language is great, Tara. I think what's gonna be needed though is some kind of. A map for people to understand what that means, as Margaret was saying, so.
yeah.
As
Yeah.
a handout,
Yeah.
this is what this language means.
And if I do it on the PDF, you can put it up on the website too with the draft amendments.
I don't know if there's a printing error or I have pages 1, 3, and 5. I do not have.
That's what I have too.
Somebody copied only one side, or
Yeah.
Right there, but-
you're gonna need 2, 4, and 6.
Yeah, no.
We'll get some of that.
Right, it was probably double sided.
Got it, give it 5 minutes.
So take a long time on this.
Did we want to,
Did he do that?
What?
Mike?
about.
Mike, excuse me,
It's not part of the meeting.
I'm sorry, but you gotta, if you have something to say, it's gonna be very transparent, okay?
So are there any comments on this?
I think we're waiting for the other pages.
Yeah, we just took 2 more minutes and she's gonna make some copies and bring them down.
People that should have much time as she needs.
Yeah, this is the end of this amendment though. So are there any comments on Amendment 7?
No,
Amendment 7 doesn't go on to the next page.
right.
Okay,
I,
yes,
it's hard to understand exactly what these amendments mean in reference to the proposed housing on the parking. Lot. So that's, I'm trying to figure out how the changes of those setbacks and things would look to, how would that impact village condominiums and the owners that are on the back parking lot. So it's without some sort of visual understanding, it's hard to kind of see what you guys are talking about.
Mm.
So
I'd be a little bit concerned about the board discussing proposed zoning amendments in reference to a conceptual plan of a landowner.
I'm sorry,
I don't know what that means.
what's your name?
Blair Alexander.
Hi, Blair. We have nothing in front of the board yet. In terms of a site plan to discuss with regard to any proposed
I
development,
was
so.
entertaining to change amendments without understanding how that would affect certain things. If there's a, you know, someone's planning something, we don't know. We just have to go on good faith.
Was not, there's no connection between these proposed amendments and what anybody might be planning, but for the public hearing, as we talked about, I'm happy to take a copy of the zoning map and highlight all the boundaries that will be affected by amendment 6 and 7. So it'll be easy to see, you know, and put yourself there if you're abutting one of those.
And where would we get that? Is that, would that go out to, that would just be put on the town website, or would that be sent to property
She's gonna
owners?
clarify.
We could put it right on, I mean, I can make it part of this, if the planning board wishes, I can make those maps part of the file that the staff posts on the website.
perfect, Kathy.
You can also, I think it would be easier too to understand is just even, which you can get at any time, I think it's just a copy of our zoning. So the as it is now, copy of the zoning map, because then you can look at that and then you can look at what they're talking about as far as where's HDRL, you know, and that might help. Obviously what we're gonna do too, I think will be a big help. But in the meantime,
Also, maybe somebody in the staff could give her the link to the online town GIS. You can zoom right in on your property and
can do
overlay the zoning on that.
And anybody could do that by just going to the town website, go on to Find It Fast and look for the GIS hot link, click on it, and that is, the zoning, map is pulled up in detail electronically.
It's pretty great.
And it's interactive as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I use that all the time.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's awesome.
Oh, I just wrote it.
That's. But now you know. where
Yeah,
to
okay.
get it For real, yeah.
So any comments on the board on this language?
No.
No, I think it
I
looks
think we
good.
should bring it forward to a public hearing.
Yeah,
I agree.
I
Yeah.
agree.
That's fine.
So I think 8's pretty simple to start talking about. 8 is reducing the parking space requirement for an ADU from 2 to 1, and you did see this language in the concept papers you've had.
Oh, that's, yeah, we don't have that copy. here.
Right, you've seen this before, though. This is,
Yeah,
It's not new.
Yes, no, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, this was the discussion of how many parking spots are required for an ADU,
And lowering that so that
Lowering
it becomes easier.
2 to 1.
yeah, and you've seen this language.
Again, I think it's ripe to go in front of a public hearing.
Agreed.
yes, Margaret.
Just for the record, somebody explain what an ADU is,
Accessory
Sure.
dwelling unit.
which is.
Well, you have a different name for it in your zoning ordinance. You call it a 2-family residential unit. Which
Yeah,
is
it's-
what I
it's
put
two-
parentheses, single family with ADU, because that's what everybody thinks about it as.
A mother-in-law's apartment is a colloquial term for it.
Yeah. That's
Um,
both.
Just so the public understands.
right,
That's,
But I believe it also has to be connected to the
yes,
main
you are.
residential
Main
unit.
residential.
It's not a separate building, it
Right.
is a connected. It is connected to the primary
Right,
residence.
so effectively, that residence plus ADU now effectively has a minimum of. Can't do things with its hand, with 3 parking spaces. I think that's
So-
what people recognize.
So I'm hearing when I write the description, that I should amend the description so that it explains what an accessory dwelling unit is.
That would be very
That
helpful,
would
thank
Yes,
you.
it'd be very helpful.
Okay, do this again.
Thank you.
Margaret, do you
I got
have
one
the
for Margaret.
additional one? You have it?
There it goes.
I got extra.
Yeah. The public attached.
they have.
We need more in the public.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we're all good.
Okay.
We can move on to 9.
Okay,
I'd recommend we move on to 9. Mr. Chair.
yeah, I recommend that.
Yeah.
Can we
You
move
can
on
order it.
to number 9?
So 9's a little more complex. And it, for the warrant at least, is gonna need more explanation, and maybe for the public hearing. I had a lot more language in this description, and then I didn't know when to stop, so I just shortened it to 1 sentence. But basically, you talk about where parking needs to be and how much right now in 2 different sections of the zoning ordinance. You have this section B and then you have section C. And when we did an amendment some years back to add some more flexibility to C, we didn't really make them line up very well. So I'm trying to do that here as part of the, increasing a little opportunity for, we want to make sure we're encouraging people to use the flexible zoning, and we haven't really seen that. And I think it's because it was inconsistent and unclear. So what I'm proposing is to take this whole section 3A through D out of B. So in B, we're not, I don't know if you have your zoning ordinance with you. I can point you to the page if you do, but we take it out, rewrite it, and put it in C with the other flexible parking language and we'd retitle the parking table. Because we say, give us a parking plan and show us what you need, and we might be able to be flexible. And then we have a table that says parking requirements, minimum number of spaces. So what were we thinking, says your town planner, who did this? Clearly, I should have gone a little further with that last amendment 2 years ago. So, we'd take this language about the 300-foot radius out of, this piece, this paragraph, we want to just talk about the flexible parking in one place. So we want to maybe say, unless you're applying for this flexible parking thing, it needs to be on the same lot or an adjacent lot. And then we wait and talk about the 300 feet later on. It helps if you look at all of B and C together. That's why I put a lot of it in here. I would retitle the parking table that says parking requirements, just say number of spaces, but talk about what it means in the text. So we'd get rid of this text that says the minimum number of off-street spaces, because we want to make them guidelines, and then we put all this language in front of it called determination of space requirements that combines all the discussion about the parking plan in one place. And add something new. This V is a new concept that A's pretty much just moved and C's pretty much just moved, but B's a new concept that we've talked about in the previous meetings on parking, that that maybe if most of the people going to a restaurant are staying in lodging or expected to be staying on lodging, or half of them, then that restaurant doesn't need so many parking spaces. But it just allows that kind of thought because what we've been trying to do all these years that I've been working with you is implement your walkability plan.
So this just gives the planning board the flexibility to have that consideration.
Right.
In the zoning.
But not required. I have a question which I had. Doesn't matter when. Let's suppose, as I used to say, for yucks and giggles, that we do get our gondola. The gondola. And there is a parking garage on the floor of the valley, and people park in that parking garage exclusively to use the gondola to go up skiing. Would the gondola be enough for adjacent parking? Or are we talking about from where they're actually using the mountain?
No, I think then we'd look at this flexible parking section. That would
Okay.
not count as adjacent, no.
Would
But-
not, the thing that hurt my brain, my tiny old brain, was the word adjacent.
No, if that wouldn't be adjacent, but in that case, they'd look at this flexible parking section that says, well, it's not adjacent, it's not even 1,000 feet, but here's some new language that lets the planning board issue a conditional use permit if it's one of these unique situations.
Okay, so just so I understand and everyone understands. The thing that I kind of threw out, which is there's a parking garage, people use it exclusively to go to a gondola, go up to the top of the mountain. The adjacent doesn't work, but we, the planning board, would have the flexibility to allow it because of that flexibility provision that we have.
Will have.
Would have.
Yeah, right.
All right, so my tiny brain sometimes thinks of strange things.
So we're trying to keep the same parking numbers the guidelines, the same 300-foot walking distance, the same 1,000-foot for non-residential. But say, okay, there could be some things that just don't fall in that. Here's a
Okay.
little bit higher bar for the planning board to have to decide on.
Okay, that's fine. I just
Yeah.
make sure, you know, as long as we can get there. Okay,
We're just trying to provide the flexibility so that in the continuing development of the town, we're not forcing businesses to park by numbers.
no, but
Right, I
That's
mean,
it.
I think you wanna minimize the amount of your village core that's eaten up with parking, right?
well,
Yes,
Yes.
we want
Yes.
something else in town rather than parking lots.
Right. But you don't want people parking on the roadside, so I think that we've threaded that needle pretty well here.
Yeah,
I agree.
okay.
Number 10.
Number 10, yes.
All right, number 10 is put in some language to the concept that we've talked about, but haven't had language to look at. That you didn't hear any pushback with the 6 people at the public meeting, but that's only 6. So right now and it was brought to our attention with the Golden Heights proposal, right now, the way the zoning ordinance is written, even in a planned unit development, you can only allow the one dwelling per 20,000 per half-acre lot. And that's why you have 2 multifamily buildings on that land. Developer would much have preferred to put 6 smaller homes. That would have been attractive. Zoning wouldn't allow it. We double checked with town council. So this is a way to say, let's allow it and put an incentive in there for some smaller homes in town that might be more affordable to the workforce. And I gave you your whole PUD language in here so that everybody can see all of it and how it hangs together with the other requirements that you already have for landscaping and design and things like that.
Yep.
It's a good one for the public to discuss, see
It
what they
is.
think
Yes.
about it.
yeah, it can take some time to ruminate in their brain.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Put it out there for the public hearing.
And I think if you have a December hearing and you get, that leaves room for a January hearing, if you get feedback on any of these that makes, identifies ways to improve the language.
Yeah.
You guys seem to like to have January public hearings, even though they make me and the people writing your warrant stressed, but.
I think.
Well, we could easily say that Amendment 10 is intended to make it possible to build cottage courts.
Yes,
Sure.
and we can have some, examples to show at the hearing. I have another housing opportunity program public hearing the night that would be your normal hearing date, but I arranged with Kayla to cover that one so that I can do yours. So if you want to schedule it for what would be your regular hearing date like we did last night, that works for me.
So that would be December
13th.
13th. Our next meeting is on December 14th.
Good, perfect. And Morocco.
And I can have some graphics, for several of these to show, right? As we talked about kind of the highlighted zoning. What did I write? So
What do you think?
what I wrote, so you would want to see highlighted zoning maps for Amendment 6 and 7. Before this leaves my desk, more explanation of the ADU in the description of 8. And 10 at the hearing, we'll have some pictures of the cottage court idea.
I unfortunately, assuming that we're allowed to go, are gonna be away at that time. But one of the things that I think was really important in this discussion that we had is that this is a very forward-thinking amendment in that it may not be for things currently, but it may very well be important for redevelopment.
Mhm.
And I think that that's a very important thing for everyone to understand. That this may not happen in a year or 2 or 5, but it is something that may happen sometime in the future. I think that's really important.
Richard, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll ask the question. Rich, are you proposing another one of these 6 o'clock evening meetings?
Yes, I think that's what Tara was,
Okay.
and
so
the
let's try
13th
to make
would
that
be-
clear that
the 13th at 6 p.m.
we'll go over all of these amendments again,
The housing, it's the housing public hearing,
just specifically housing.
right?
Okay, so
6
that's
to 10.
6 to 10.
Yep.
Good.
So, amendment 6 to 10, not 6 o'clock to 10.
You never know.
You never know. That could happen.
So do you want to vote to have a public hearing on these? With additional explanation of the ADU in the description of number 8. It's the only change to the narrative I heard.
Yeah, let's make a motion on that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board set another public hearing on December 13 at 6 p.m. to discuss the proposed housing zoning amendments.
As amended today.
Okay, as amended, further amended today.
Seconded.
Morgan, second that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
My guy,
Just do, aye.
Aye.
Nancy, you good?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, Done.
Done.
that's a lot of information. Okay,
Oh, you good. All these amendments? It's gonna be a busy town meeting.
Yeah, I think, do we need to, there's a concern, we got what, how many amendments we gonna have? 8 zoning
10.
amendments? 10
10
zoning
already.
amendments on the ballot. Should that be a cause of concern?
Well, let's see what
They look like?
they.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
worried
so
about
let's-
that.
Let's see what
you're
happens.
worried about the amount of time that
Yeah.
is gonna be taken,
No, there's no time because it's ballot.
It's all balloting.
right?
But it's been my experience that when people don't understand something or they're faced by a lot of decisions,
Mhm.
there's a lot of no
They
vote.
vote no.
Yeah.
Or no voting.
We just gotta
Blank.
communicate very clearly what the changes
Yep.
are.
Right,
And
right.
Let's see what the amendment, what they look like. But
Right.
in the ballot form.
Yeah, because we've had the experience that it doesn't take much to create a no vote.
Well,
Oh.
we'll have the February informational meeting and we can get some help from North Country Council on outreach under the HUP grant, so.
I think the greater concern is that people just won't vote on it. It'll just be neither yes nor no. People don't
They just
understand.
pass on
They'll
it.
just pass on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, moving
Next,
forward.
next item, yeah.
We'll
Yep,
do
there's-
the conceptual consultation next and save the CIP.
Yes, we can. So,
James doesn't want to hear our CIP discussion.
Oh, I love CIP. Many of them myself in my. I've got, yeah, Sharon gave me. the
Okay.
link.
All right.
So thank you. Mark's gonna put, I had some visuals to share, so I'm just gonna wait till he puts those up and I'm staying over here if that's okay instead of the microphone. But I'll just preface this with, so,
James,
oh yeah,
one moment, please.
Yeah.
I would just like everyone to be very respectful. No
no.
asking, no one asking questions and blurting out their questions. You want to ask questions? We'll wait till James is done. Let's be respectful to him. If you have a question, you go through me. I will let you speak, but this is just a conceptual consultant. That's all it is today. Let's be respectful to James.
Thank you.
Go ahead, James.
So housing, we all talked a lot about housing, we talk a lot about housing for the resort. We talk about housing when it comes to the master plan for the village and how to meet the needs of the increased business that will be there. So I spent a lot of time brainstorming housing. As we all know, we're very land constrained here in Waterville Valley, private land development, most of which is already developed except for in the core. But we have been working, trying to come up with creative ideas to address workforce housing. And it's kind of a broad definition. We have some workforce housing for our employees right now at the Snow Star, for example. A lot of that is more dormitory bit style. You know, you have for seasonal workers, we have some bunk room style, you can have apartments, but in general, when we're thinking about workforce housing these days, we're thinking about apartments. There's really no traditional apartments in Waterville Valley. It's an important part of the housing mix that is lacking here. And so we have been looking at trying to fill gaps in that part of the housing market so that folks who work in the valley can find a place to live in the valley. As we all know, single family home prices here are very, very high. There's not a very good entry level. Apartments are one way people can enter into a community and live in the same place where they work. So we have been trying to envision ways to address that need. So this is an idea that I had come up with. I had a discussion with Tara a couple months back, just saying, hey, here's an idea we came up with. What do you know, give us your feedback. She thought it was worthwhile enough to bring to you to talk about. Again, this is just in the idea stage. This is not a plan we're presenting. To move forward from here into a real plan is going to start to require some investment of money. And so we want to make sure we are, you know, at least in the realm of feasibility before we go ahead and do that. So getting feedback from the planning board is part of that process of deciding if we can go from idea to actual real planning and potential development. So your feedback today would be very valuable towards that. So Mark, if you could put up that, I just have a few visuals to show what we're talking about. It's just some slides that really just all pictures of the site we're talking about. What we're talking about is actually in the area of the parking lot across the street from the conference center. And so this is a 1994 circa site plan for the conference center parking lot. The dark line here is the actual lot boundary for the conference center parking lot. The dotted lines are roughly the paved areas there. Across the street here, this is the conference center itself. This is the Snow Star. This is the parking lot for the Inns of Waterville Valley. This is the Silver Fox, and this is the Valley Inn. And these are the condominium development behind through the trees here from this parking lot. So we started looking at this parking lot and in terms of its utilization and things, you know, we actually got a good idea of its utilization. And over the last couple of years when we've had increase in wedding business, for example, and conference business. So we looked at that. Mark, if you go to the next slide. So what we have brainstormed here is this end of the parking lot where there's some pavement. This is where all the paving was staged for the roads, the town's paving projects that were going on. Everyone saw all the equipment there. And gave us a good example of if this part of the parking lot isn't available to be used for the conference center, what would happen? And it's frankly didn't really have much of an impact on parking for the conference center. So the idea is to separate a lot off at this end of the parking lot. And the red outline you see here is a 65-foot by 150-foot building footprint. And so what you could have there is that size footprint where you have podium parking, which is all the parking underneath the building up at ground level. And then 3 floors of apartments above that. You could have 10 to 12 units per floor, 30 to 36 units in the building. It would be a mixture, you know, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom studios. Don't know what that mixture would be yet, but there's plenty of examples to look at for what that mixture could be. Apartments. The key things here and this is zone village commercial. This is in the VC zone. This lot here. So the key things here from a zoning perspective, for example, is setbacks. It's given the width of the width of that building is needed, so you can have 2 stalls of parking underneath the building, parallel stalls of parking underneath the building. We're pushing up against setback limits, so it might be that when we got to the planning stage and did a updated survey and imposed a building footprint on there, we're pushing up into the setbacks, so we'd be looking for a waiver on something like setbacks. From a height perspective, it probably would be okay. We think it would be within the height limits required in the zoning. But the other factor that would come into play is something you were just talking about here, which is parking. You know, if we go by the parking table, it becomes very challenging to get the requisite number of parking spots on site. Because under the building, you'd have about 24 spaces. And Mark, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah. So you can see here, this is basically the same image. It's a Google Earth photo. The lot lines aren't here, but that's the same exact size footprint you'd see there. Again, you can see it's, you know, especially, you know, the front setback in particular will probably be not meet the requirements under the zone. But you have 24 parking spots under the building. What we've looked at is across the street is the Silver Fox parking lot, which is another resort-owned property. And you can see it pretty well here. Right now, there's about 32 or 33 parking spaces for that hotel, which is the required number of 1 per room in the hotel. They're configured in 3 rows here. That parking lot can be reconfigured. If this center island is reduced, you can end up with 4 rows of parking. You add another row of parking over here. We could add at least a dozen spots there that could be dedicated to this building over here, which would bring us up to a minimum of one parking spot per unit in this building. And if we need to go above that, we could look at some shared spots, either adjacent to that in the conference center parking lot or another adjacent property, if we needed to have, you know, for example, overflow parking. So this is the gist of the idea. I think there's one more. Oh yeah, finally, sorry, the last thing I wanted to show you, and I'm just trying to be succinct here so you guys can ask me any questions you have. This is not the architecture of a building we would be proposing. However, this is a proposed building down in Portsmouth on the seacoast where I am that happens to be 65 by 150 feet with podium parking and 3 levels of apartments. This is part of a proposed project down there that is going on. And when I looked at it, it is literally the same kind of footprint and elevation as what we're talking about. So I wanted to throw that in here so you can see the sort of scale of building that we're talking about that would fit into that footprint that I was talking about with the podium parking and 3 floors of apartments above it. So that's it in a nutshell. And so what I'm here for is to get feedback from you. Like I said, it would probably require a couple of waivers, I think, on setbacks and parking in particular. Other than that, I think it would we can probably make it fit in with all the other criteria in the zoning ordinance, unless Tara might have some thoughts about that. We did, like I said, we did run this by her. But that's the gist of it. So getting feedback from you on the idea around this, you know, and would help inform us about whether it is something we should continue pursuing.
What's the height of that building?
Hold it.
Sorry, Mr. Excuse me.
No one speak. You want to speak, you raise your hand. I'll look at you and
Yeah.
I'll let you go. Kathy, go ahead.
So my concerns would just be, so we're talking about setback limits that we might need to look at. What, like, the devil's in the details, right? So I mean, we could still meet that
The
with
side and rear
concern.
setbacks are 20 feet.
Yeah.
If we met that, again, it depends where you position the building, especially at that narrow end of the lot. If you meet those 20 feet, you're probably short 5+ feet in the front. Because the front setback is defined by the road right of way. So I'm not really sure exactly where the road right of way is, so I can't come up with an accurate measurement right now. But I think you're really looking at a front setback that might be less than the 35 that is required.
Mark, could you show the map? So that, yeah,
So that would
thank you.
just be, I mean, my concerns would be setback, I mean,
Yep.
would be setback,
Sure.
variances, because that's, and also the Silver Fox parking lot would just be a big parking lot, all those trees would come out in the middle, but I mean, that's.
Yeah, I think you could still have a landscaped island in the middle, for example, with, for example, a row of arborvitae's instead of a few scattered trees. Right now, it's pretty open, there's a few trees in there, you could still have, I think you could still have a landscaped center island there, for sure, but again, by salvaging some of that space back, and I mean, it's a parking lot that's gonna be it needs work anyways, so we're looking at that down the road and saying, oh, here's an opportunity to do this in a more efficient way.
Anyone else have Mike, go ahead.
So you're envisioning this as rental worker apartments primarily for your operations.
Not necessarily, no. We are, right now, we're envisioning it as market rate apartments. It becomes, it depends on. We're not looking at it as a way to, as exclusively for resort employees. No, if that's what you're asking, no. We're looking to increase the housing stock in the valley, and this is in a way that rising tides lift all boats. More housing that is available for workers in the valley is going to be good for all the businesses in the valley and good for the residential mix in the valley. So this is not just something we are looking at. This is for resort employees only to rent. They are available for rent. Now, they will not be something like Airbnbs or anything, not that. They will be for rent for, long-term leases, under long-term leases for residential use, not vacation rentals or anything like that. Yes.
What you, can I follow up? Sure, go ahead. You used a very important word, I think, and that is market rate. So market rate, I don't know if you see any realtors here today, but market rate today, for example, for a 2-bedroom unit is.
We don't know.
We don't
Well,
know, it doesn't matter.
Nobody knows what the market rate for an apartment in Waterville Valley is, because there is no apartment market in Waterville Valley. There are condominium rentals,
Right.
but those are different. They're just different animals. A 2-bedroom, 800 square foot apartment in a 30-unit building with a hallway and
Yeah.
a stairway. It's a different animal from that. So we can look at Grafton County rents.
Yeah.
The housing study, I don't know, Mark's not here, I'm waiting
not.
here. But there's a housing study that, I know Mark's familiar with.
Right,
that looks
what
at
happens
Grafton
in
County. So
Grafton County?
now I say
is
market
that-
rate because non-market rate means you've involved, one of the housing authorities or New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority or gotten low-income housing tax credits so that you can keep those rents below market rate. We're not in line for any of those, and it's very, very, very competitive to get those things.
Very.
Now, we can look into that, and we will look into that if this moves forward, but there is zero guarantee that would be available to us with something like this. It's a very complicated market. There are folks out there who are very familiar with this, that do affordable housing versus market rate housing development, and we would certainly talk to those folks. So I say market rate because we don't have anything lined up that would make them anything other than that.
I've done low-income housing credits. I've worked with developers that have done it multiple times. I understand all that. That's why I went back to what you said.
Yes.
Of market rent and not what it would be necessarily in Grafton County. Grafton County is pretty big. I always think we're kind of different than, for example, Rumney.
I would think these would be the above average.
Yeah.
For Grafton County,
Right, no, the important word you said was. It is not necessarily affordable credits, low-income housing credits. It is designed for. What would be market rent here in Waterville Valley, not otherwise. That was important.
Yeah, Bill?
My question is, I think that the ordinance says now that height restriction on buildings is 35 feet.
45 for multifamily in Village.
45.
This would be right about at that height.
Right about that.
Okay.
Morgan?
So not So Waterville, we know, it has quite a different standard of housing, and the prices here, as you have said, can be outrageous. How does someone who makes less than $100,000 working at the resort pay market value in Waterville Valley for an apartment?
I haven't run the numbers on that. We have had a developer look at this and sort of pencil it out as to what the economics of it might be. But you're right, it's not like a $15 an hour resort worker is going to be able to afford this. But more housing, the only way to decrease the cost of housing in the market is to have more supply. So this is more supply. It's not the end of the supply problem, but it does contribute to the supply problem.
Yeah.
So, you know, how a particular worker affords that, I couldn't say, but I think it's pretty clear there will be demand. You might have where you have a married couple who are both income earners and they have a combined income that makes this affordable. It could be studio apartments that are small enough that you have it be affordable to a mid-level worker at one of the properties, someone who works in management at one of the lodging properties, for example, or something like that. So again, we're talking about 30 to 36 units. So I think given the number of workers in town, virtually none of, for example, the resorts workers live in town, but we do know some who certainly make the incomes that would make these a viable option. So we believe there's enough people around for whom at market rate they could rent these. And if along the way we can find a way to, have, I typically in a lot of these developments, you see a small number of them carved out as affordable units because you get the tax credits or some other type of subsidy to help defray the cost of keeping those rents low. And we would certainly look at that, but it's really just trying to increase the supply and have those curves look a little bit better on supply and
That's an
demand.
excellent answer. Thank you.
Leslie, do you have anybody in your group that has a question?
Do you mind?
Please, go ahead.
So I guess my first question is, the town square was originally built to have apartments upstairs, and I think there are 35 of them. So why wouldn't you use that?
Those were built as condominiums and they are rented as such for vacation.
Okay, so the original plan was for employee housing, I believe, and
We do use part of them as employee housing.
Right.
We use some of the units in one of the buildings as
Right.
employee housing.
Okay. And why wouldn't you just do more improvements to the Snow Star Inn? Because you're currently using that, it just seems like it's a building that's already.
We just invested several $100,000 in the Snow Star Inn to improve it.
Okay, so you're gonna continue to use that, it won't be demolished,
The need here is far greater than the current inventory.
right? Okay,
As I said, we literally have 2 resort employees who live in town. And a large number of the ones who don't, it's because of lack of housing options that are affordable to them. So there is a huge need here for apartment style housing. That's really the part of the market that is absent here in Waterville Valley. And so without affordable starter homes, you're not going to have anybody living in this valley who isn't making a very substantial income. And right now, with the lack of available land, the only way to provide something that is at least some semblance of a starter or entry point into the housing market here is apartments.
Right, so go up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Margaret,
James, would you be reserving some of these units, perhaps as an incentive to hire somebody? To provide them with housing as part of their employment contract with the mountain?
It's possible. For example, one of the other places we're looking is up on the Forest Service land on the other side of the river. There's a language in the farm bill that hasn't been renewed yet because of the lack of a budget in Washington, but we expect it to be. But one of the things we were looking at that might be part of that was, for example, a business such as Waterville Valley Resort would master lease a certain number of the units and then could sublease them to employees. And in fact, might even take a loss on subleasing them to certain employees as you look at that as it's a cost of doing business in terms of employee retention or hiring. So, and the town has looked at that as well as, oh, maybe the town would rent a couple of units and then sublease them to employees. And again, it helps provide an entry point for folks who might not otherwise be able to afford it. And, you know, from the resort's perspective, we look at it as, you know, again, it would be, you know, kind of factored into, well, this is the cost of this goes into the bucket of labor costs where we have employees we want to hire or retain and they're having trouble with housing. And we, you know, the sublease, you know, the lease is here and the sublease is here and we're absorbing that difference as a cost of doing that. So you could have the same sort of thing here where a business might look to lease one or more units and then sublease them to their employees in a way that makes sense.
That helps with your fund, and that helps with finance. Right?
John?
One moment, I think I saw someone, did you have your hand up?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so I had just a couple of questions. And I don't know all the language that's being used, but one thing that concerns me is a multifamily versus an apartment building. So to me, just on the, doesn't seem like since we have no apartment buildings in Waterville Valley, there's really any language or rules that talk about apartment buildings versus a multifamily. So for me, a multifamily is a home that has multifamilies as opposed to an apartment building. And the structure that you put out is a pretty massive wall. I mean, and so it goes up, as you said, 45 feet in a complete square. So there's no sort of airflow or visual, like it's like a cement wall for people who are living behind them. And it cuts off all of their views of the mountains and any kind of space or nature, which is why a lot of people, you know, have come up.
Well, I believe,
I mean,
sorry.
so there are some visual also types of things to put maximum density in a parking lot. And you got the setback that you're gonna need variance on the front, but is there for the back? Is there a variance that you're gonna need for the back of?
I don't think so, but I can't be sure until we actually did the site plan, so.
Okay. And there is also a stream in the back, so I don't know if that water issues or if there's any kind of different variance when there's a stream behind that parking
I'm not
lot.
aware of one, but I would defer to the
So just on
folks who are more
the environmental level.
expert
Yeah, the Conservation Commission would sign off on that if it was okay, and the planning board also be involved.
Okay, so I just like that, there is a stream that runs between the parking lot and the village condominiums.
And
So that's just
it
an
still would
FYI.
expect, there would still be the tree buffer between the building and the properties behind it. It's not like we're looking to clear cut.
Well, it's not a lot of trees in
Yeah.
the wall. I mean, I think you just said you live on the feed. So there's a lot of development and stuff like that. And so there are, I'm not gonna get the name right, where when people are developing buildings, they also put different peaks and stuff. So
Oh, all of
so
that is,
airflow,
oh, yes,
but
no,
you
all of
just
that can be part of
presented a
that. I
square
just,
building.
yeah, that was just an example to show the scale of that building happened to be the exact same 65 by 150 footprint with podium parking and 3 levels. So
Okay. I
that
didn't
was sort
know
of just a massing, here's the scale of the type of the building you'd be talking about. There's been no architecture done on any of this yet, so,
So
and
I'm
that
just
would be
saying-
part
I'm
of the
just
planning
saying
board
that is a
presentation,
proposed,
so, yeah.
you know, as a thing. And so then, you know, that brings me back to when you guys were doing amendments for parking spaces and things along those lines. You said 30, and then at one point you said maybe 36 apartment buildings. That's a lot of, and if you're gonna have one parking space per built per unit, which if there's a 2-bedroom unit or a family unit, I mean, I don't
But there's
know a lot of
opportunities to
people.
have other additional parking space on adjacent properties under that same guideline of parking, you know, within a certain distance. Part of that's already in the zoning ordinance and some of the language that was being talked about earlier clarifies that, but it's already in the zoning ordinance to look at properties within a certain distance to provide additional parking if needed.
This is just conceptual.
No, I know,
They're just-
but I think it's worth asking because
Yeah,
you
you'll
guys
have,
are proposing
you'll have a lot
ordinance
more,
changes
you'll have a lot more.
before this stuff gets done.
Mhm.
John,
Yes, go ahead.
Can I clarify one thing and offer some feedback to the applicant since it's a conceptual?
Yes, please, Tara, go ahead.
So the definition of multifamily dwelling actually includes the word apartment. Multifamily is anything that's 3 or more dwelling units. We don't regulate ownership, whether it's condominium ownership or rentals, that would be outside the purview of zoning. My kind of feedback to the applicant, because only the zoning board can help you out with setbacks, and that's probably going to be the higher bar. My advice to anybody that's going to need to go to the zoning board is to invest as little as you can in putting the plans together that identify what relief you need from the setback and kind of what the mass and architecture of the building might look like, and go to the zoning board first before spending money on any engineering, because the site plan is really the costly piece, and you don't want to do that until you can get your variance to the setbacks from the zoning board.
Okay.
Rich, you had your hand up.
No, I was just gonna make the point to dovetail on what James was saying, that the town has some 20 odd employees, and I believe only 2 maybe live in town. So it's the same issue for town employees, which is a group of people that are very important to the town, the taxpayers.
Mike, go ahead.
Do you have, and I understand the term conceptual. Do you have any timeline as to when you might consider moving forward?
No.
Thank you. No. I don't have a problem with that.
This is throwing the promising result of throwing spaghetti at the wall, right?
That's fine.
So, I mean, I spend a lot of time on the town's GIS, believe me. Looking at lots and where we might be able to do things and where we might be able to fit things and how we might be able to fit them. And I mean, and frankly, I say no, not because I don't want it to move forward quickly, but the reality is the economics of this is still exceedingly challenging with construction costs and interest rate costs right here, where they are right now. This is still exceedingly challenging economically, even with, virtually zero land cost. And, not having the need to have an AOT because it's obviously not even close to 100,000 square feet. It's still exceedingly challenging to make these buildings work. And you know what? That's why they're not being built anywhere unless people either can build them on where I live on the seacoast and charge $4,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment, or they can get an affordable housing grant of one shape or another. Those are the only 2 buckets of housing, this type of housing you really see being built. So it's very, very challenging.
Rick, you had your hand up.
Yeah, that maybe ties in a little bit of what you were just saying, and I'm not sure you said this earlier, but if the farm bill passes, you can get the financing and everything you were just talking about kind of squared away for the property up the street here. Does that make this move?
No.
Okay.
It's
So this will be
it's not an either or.
Okay.
And frankly, we probably wouldn't even be stopping there. We're still looking, I don't know if I had the conversation here or, when we talked about the master plan and parking, for example, and parking garages, and I know I certainly get the feelings about parking garages. With that plan was designed to meet the parking requirements in the zoning ordinance as it exists today. If those parking requirements become more flexible and recognize more explicitly the fact that folks who are staying in a hotel that has dedicated parking aren't going to also need to park to go over to the commercial enterprise over here. There's a kind of is in essence a bucket of shared parking. You can reduce that. We could look at, reducing the size of one of those garages, for example, and putting in another type building of this sort in adjacent to that, because the need is way more than what just this and or that potential project up on the Forest Service land could address.
Thank
you. Sergeant, go ahead.
No, just in regard to the ordinances, and I've been on the planning board for 5 years now, and I'm very much a layperson. I did something very different, so I understand when you hear all this terminology And to be honest with you, I'm still learning. But the one thing over that time is that we did a massive effort a few years ago to re-look at the entire, set of ordinances through, and we went through that, and thank God we had Tara to help us with all her experience. But the one thing that I've come to learn is that, ordinances are always maturing, they're fluid. So when we did our last full update, it was like, okay, that's it. Well, it's not that easy. And so it just wanted that, put that perspective out there that, yes, we're making changes. Every year we're evaluating changes to mature and improve. So.
Anyone else have any thoughts? Yes.
And then I just for, just to follow up on what you just said, so I also, live in a, seasonal town, for my full-time and, on the water in Rhode Island. And so I am used to these types of conversation and understanding very serious issues with housing. It's a constant issue in where I live, for employees, for people to work in a tourist-based environment. So I completely understand that. And I'm very sensitive to that issue. And what has happened in many places, in the seacoast, in all sort of tourist-based or whatever seasonal type of places, is the development starts and things start getting changed, and then it gets out of control. And what makes Waterville special then disappears, because you come in and there's 35-foot square buildings lining that street when you come in. And one of the things that when Corcoran developed Village Condos, just to use that, was that concept of open space, being able to be into nature. And when he had planned the town, he very carefully, as I understand it, as I have read a book or something about it, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on that, was that concept of open space. It's at the end of the road, it's surrounded by mountains. He said, in order to make a town, you need a school, that's why people have fought to keep the school here. I agree with all of that. And so I do think you run the risk of ruining or really, running into issues when you start changing things before there's really a big plan. So this gentleman talked about the cottages, that would be a lot different feel at the end of that parking lot. Cottages that families who worked here could live, but I don't even get the sense you're saying market rate, and it might go to people who work here or might not. Like if we're talking about affordable housing for people who live and work in the valley, I think that's really important. But to me, it sounds like there's different language going on that, for people who don't spend every minute understanding every single law and ordinance and trying to read and write all of this kind of stuff. You have people start putting in things to make what they need work, right? At the cost of what, this town at the end, this is a different community, right? Than Lincoln, right? Than a lot of different places. And, I don't even know if do all those buildings in Lincoln, is that all people who work on the mountains? I don't, there's a lot of people who have condos and who come up and, go up there. So, I mean, it's, family resort, that's a lot of, it's quiet, it's calm. There's going to be, when there's 36, let's just go with the top end. There's going to be noise, there's going to be music. We had something earlier being talked about that, the noise levels of casual conversation and music. The casual conversation and music and in and out of driving and I don't know, what, goes on. I mean, that's gonna be a problem. That's a lot of people in a small space. And the noise, who's regulating that? I mean, these are all things that need to get talked about and thought about, before a massive change. And so if we're talking about families who can afford to live here, and I love your cottage court and the smaller dwellings and things like that fits into the town, a massive structure that would, the people at the end, I don't know which number building that is, I mean, that's a wall in front of them. I mean,
It's right behind your condo.
no, it's right behind my condo, no. I mean, mine's a little bit closer to that walkway that goes in through, so, but yeah, if you put a 35 or 45-foot structure, I mean, I might as well move back to the city. I mean, well, yeah.
Leslie, go
John?
ahead.
John, can I just hop in for a minute?
Yep. Go ahead.
I'm concerned that, there could be some misinformation out there that connects this with the zoning amendments being proposed. The zoning amendments being proposed don't change anything about this building. It's across from the HDR, so it would still be a 35-foot setback, and they'd need to go to the zoning board for a variance. None of the proposed zoning amendments affect this concept. It other than the front setback, as far as I can tell from a concept, the zoning already allows it. So nobody's proposing any change to the zoning ordinance regarding this building. It's already allowed except for that front setback.
Leslie?
So I guess my question is, again, back to the town square, is there something to prevent the developer of this from turning it into a short-term rental property? Because I know for a fact that the town square was built with employee housing on the 3rd level. So you could build this and then decide I can make way more money at $500 a
It would be
night.
simple to deed
Yeah.
in a restriction.
Yeah.
So that would be something we need to consider, right?
No, those are not difficult things to
Right.
ensure.
Okay. And then again, I mean, it's employee housing. I'm guessing the people that are gonna wanna live there are probably the lower income employees, as the ones that are making a ton of money either already live here or live
They
6
don't.
miles down the road.
They don't live here.
So you're gonna build this
We
for
have
the,
100 full-time employees and 500 part-time employees. 2 of them live in this town.
okay. I'm thinking that most of the people that are gonna be put in these, are they not your lift attendants, your bartenders, waiters?
No,
Um,
typically, those are more seasonal workers who wouldn't be looking to rent an apartment.
so you do year-round rentals?
Yes, the goal is for these to be long-term leases where people live in the community in which they work.
Okay, well, I mean, again, it's just my question, because I know Snowstar's got a lot going on over there. They have brought crime, as you probably all know, into town, and there's a lot of noise complaints that, we hear. But, so I'm just wondering if something of this size, I don't personally see the higher ups at the ski area with children and families wanting to live in something like this. I see them wanting to have a condominium or a home. But again, I could be wrong. I'm seeing more like the lower income level, and what's that gonna bring into the town is just something we need to think about on Blair's,
Morgan?
I think I can give you guys the perspective you're looking for.
Yeah.
I
No.
I am a nurse. My husband is a paramedic and a firefighter. He is one of the 2 town employees that live here in town. I haven't been around as long as Leslie, but I grew up in Campton and moved here. I've been here for 10 years contiguously, but I've been here for about 13 years off and on. I work in Plymouth, so I don't have a very long commute, but I would rather be here than in Campton or in Plymouth. We live in less than 800 square feet and have done so with our child and our cats for 10 years. We're here because it's a great town, because it's walkable, because you go out your door and you can hike anywhere, and because there is a great school here. if we had the opportunity to live in an apartment with other people like us, when I was working at Jugtown and not as a nurse, I would 100% jump on them. It is walkable. It's by the resort, sure, but I think that there is a huge need here that I have felt personally, and see families who have, my daughter has been best friends with, move out because they can't afford a home here and they want a yard. This isn't going to solve that because we aren't talking about single family homes. But this is a need that is so palpable here. This, before COVID, the school was going to shut down. Like that, there were so few people here with children, and that was terribly sad. And then COVID hit, and people were mad that tons of people moved in, but that's what we needed. So if we were worried about views, and we would never build anything. If we were worried about encroaching on somebody else's personal space, nothing would get done here. Amendments can only be made when we see a need, or we can look forward and say, we see that there's something happening and we want to do something to fix it. This is something that we can do to fix it. I don't want to sit here and do nothing to help the people like me who want to be here and raise their kids in a tiny community where they can literally walk out the door and not have to worry about their kids. If I were a resort employee, I would do everything I could to be here because this is a great place to be. And we all know that because we're all here and we all feel very passionately about it. But what makes Waterville special are the little families and the little school and all the people that come and go. It's a resort town. We have lots of transient folks, and that's fine. I live at Sunnyside. I'm right near you guys at Village. And just down the road from us is also the Snow Star. And I have no issue with it. And yes, there may have been crime in the beginning that's well taken care of. Dave and the police force do excellent work, and they're great community police officers. It's not really an issue. So that's just my take on it from a person that I think you guys are all speaking about. I'm that person, and I'm 100% for this.
And I'll say that, I would love to find a way to build a development of 15 or 20 cottages or tiny homes or something like that, but look at LDR and HDR and VC, there's no land lot.
Yeah.
It's all gone. No,
Right.
Not a negative remark towards anyone here, but that ship has sailed. I mean, unless it's something that's going to be torn down and redeveloped into that, there's nothing left. So the only way to have entry-level housing for folks who want to live in the community in which they work is to build something like apartments. And like I said, we're looking at multiple options. We have this, we're working with the Forest Service on that concept up there. But frankly, that's probably on a much longer timeline than something like this because it's the Forest Service. I mean, and also you have, here you have ready utilities. You have water and sewer and electric that goes right by the site already, right? Up there, you're talking about a much bigger investment in bringing utilities to a site up there, if that could even be developed. And it probably has to dovetail and do planning that goes along with the resort's planning for snowmaking pond in the same area. So that's probably on a longer glide path than something like this. And we, working on a couple of other ideas, but this is the one that probably is the most promising at this point, and why I wanted to just bring it here and get the feedback.
Mr.
John?
Chairman, it's something that's very important.
Go ahead.
John,
As a school board member,
Hold on, Alan, you'll be next.
a comment was made that school was going to close. That is not true.
Okay.
There was never any intent by the school board to do that.
There's always discussion at town meeting about it.
There's always discussion by one or two people, and it is clearly always voted down.
Okay.
All right, so there was no perspective of that, and I don't think that it should be said that there was.
Okay. I will retract it.
We all thought it was pretty close.
Well, pretty close was,
11.
I was there, and basically, the vote was about 80% or 84%. Oh, actually, not to do it. So that wasn't that close, John.
Well, not to do it and be able to afford it, probably two different.
Can we?
Right.
So I'm gonna go with Alan. Go ahead, Alan.
John, can I ask you, you said you have 500 employees. How many of them are married with school-age children versus single?
I don't know the demographic statistics of all of our employees.
We don't know that.
Yeah, but so how can you say this will be for, you know, you paint a rosy picture of couples with kids going to school if you don't know that number?
If
I
not,
mean, my fear is that you're gonna get 20 guys sleeping in one apartment.
okay, I have not painted a rosy picture of couples with kids going to school, first of all. Second of all, we have surveyed our employees about their thoughts on housing. We have worked with a outside group to formulate a plan for housing that involves surveying not just our employees, but the town's employees and the Forest Service's own employees who down in Campton, for example. The housing that we're talking about up on Forest Service land, the Forest Service is interested in because they have the same problem every other employer around here has, is they hire people, the people accept the job, they look around and can't find a place to live and they say, sorry, I'm not taking the job. So we have done surveys of employees to gauge interest in various types of housing. So we know there is interest. I don't have a demographic survey of exactly how many of our 100 full-time and 500 part-time employees have a particular number of kids, but there is a demand for this. It is unquestionable there's a demand for this.
James, I have a question for you. Where this is just conceptual. Are you okay? Do you want to continue with questions?
I'm happy to answer as many questions as people
Okay.
have. I don't want to leave here and have people say, be frustrated they didn't get to ask their question.
Okay.
John,
Um,
can I just,
Wait a minute, Tara, hold on a minute. Did someone back there have a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanna reiterate on the affordable housing, so this is on note in the village condos, so my condominium is 748 square feet, so everyone is not living in some enormous place and just, you know, so when we bought our condominium a long time ago, you know, I came up with 2 kids every single weekend. It wasn't like we were just, you know, so I sort of take offense to that like somehow we're all, you know, just don't understand that because.
Yeah, but I
I'm a
live here.
social worker. I know, well, I understand that, but I've also seen communities like where I live who people are getting priced out all over the place.
Mhm.
And they can't live there. So
Yeah.
so
That's
the
what's
discussion
going
that I'm having is not one of sort of, and one thing that ends up happening is I understand something and you don't. That's not what I said. What I said is that to have a big structure, and part of the things that is very unique about Waterville Valley is its open space. And I think there's a way also to think about affordable housing and have that actually be with people who are working on the mountain, which that's my concern about what you're saying is we're not sure what that means yet. And families, people who are using the schools, people who are eating, yes, part of the community. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily translate to quite a big structure, which would be the biggest structure, maybe not including the Valley Inn or you know, the Golden Eagle or something, you know, but I mean, that's a big structure. And I think it's worth having a conversation without getting into sort of you know, I understand something and you don't, because you, like, a lot of people have thought a lot about it and have their own communities where things are getting, you know, outpriced. People can't afford to live there. This is not an uncommon issue that's happening. And so I think that there can be an open discussion where people can talk responsibly and in communication without saying, you know, along the lines is you don't understand what I'm going through. Maybe I do.
Well, I'm sorry that you took it that way because that was not my intention to say you don't understand because you don't live here. I just feel very strongly about this because I have seen so many of my friends move out of town because they can't afford it.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
And we're just on opposite ends of it, I think, and that's fine. I mean, I don't mean any disrespect to you.
You can say that because you don't really know. I mean, I've actually been coming to Waterville Valley since, you know, 1979. So I have a very personal connection to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I don't like when people take ownership, like I know something that you don't because you don't live here, and I just don't know if everyone who comes and has a condominium here doesn't understand anything about the valley, and we don't understand anything. I just think that's when things get into trouble, when you start putting those kind of things on, and then what we're talking about can't really get discussed in a viable way. And I think putting a 45-foot big square structure has no peaks or valleys to be able to, see around and just say, who cares about views or that kind of thing. I just think that's irresponsible. I just don't, and I don't think that's right.
Tara, go ahead.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
think, I'm sure that James will take those considerations into account in designing the building. As far as the use, I think it's important that everybody understand that that's not something the planning board can even discuss. There's nothing in the zoning that says it needs to be workforce housing. In fact, the voters approved any dwelling unit in town being a short-term rental. Those aren't things that the planning board can discuss. So while dialogue is always a helpful thing, some of it isn't relevant to the planning board decision-making. If this gets a variance for the setback and meets the zoning, then the planning board's role is limited to the design of the site. Make sure it's aesthetically pleasing and has appropriate landscaping and that the revisions to the parking, that the numbers work out. The planning board isn't even allowed to talk about who does or doesn't live in a building. I just want to make that clear to the members of the public.
Go ahead.
James, I was at the Snowy Owl when you presented your plan for
Yes.
the valley. I would have assumed that you had taken into account employee housing at that point, and I do not recall this being part of that. What changed?
Well, this is not, that plan was just about the commercial lots in the center of town.
Did you plan for employee housing at that point?
We have thought about many different options for employee housing. So yes, we have thought about it. It is not explicitly on that plan. Because I think I mentioned before, we're looking at things like, would there be flexibility in parking that would free up space for different things? But we've also been looking at other options not in the core for employee housing on First Service land up there, here. So we're looking at basically all the options. There was nothing explicitly drawn on there that was designated for employee housing, but it's certainly something that could be, because that's just a conceptual plan. That's not a final plan that's going to the planning board for approval or anything like that. It's concept.
And the reason this got pushed to the forefront is simply left.
Well, development down in the core is certainly on a longer timeline. The permitting that's going on now for the gondola is on a multi-year timeline. And that's a key part of everything that goes on there. If and when that's approved, that drives what happens around it. So that's on a much longer timeline. This is something that is viable on a shorter timeline. That's why we're, thinking more about this today versus what's happening in the core, because we're on different planning timelines for various things around. The mountain's on one timeline, the village core is on a timeline, housing on the Forest Service land is on a particular timeline, development in town, redevelopment in town, those are all on different timelines. So this happens to be one that could be on a more speedy timeline than what happens in the core.
And if the core does, develop, is this really necessary? Are these third?
Yes,
units?
there is the shortage is far beyond what is envisioned as one or two housing developments. There's a massive shortage of appropriate housing, what I'll call entry-level housing. And I say that because, there's no starter home housing that you'd have in most communities here in Waterloo Valley. The lowest price level for a starter home here is exceedingly high. So, apartments become another way for people to make entry into housing in their community. And so, we're looking at that as what we need to do because of the lack of otherwise available developable land.
And is this the only available lot?
It's
I understand
within,
it's-
within our purview at the moment, yes. Yeah. If you look at what the resort owns, and what the Tyrell Development Company owns, yeah,
Because that would impact your other development plans.
I'm sorry.
So you wanna put the apartment there because you don't wanna put it in where your other plans might have other buildings?
Because the finalization of, from going from conceptual to actual plan there hinges on a number of other things. Right now, principally gondola permitting and development. We don't know exactly where and how the gondola development will go. So we can't for certain plan on putting something here when permitting might drive a change that now, oops, gee, I wish I hadn't put that there because now I have to work around this. So it's because there's sort of sequencing that by necessity has to happen in terms of when we get permitted for certain aspects of the plan. But frankly, even if we're building some proposing housing in the center of town, I'd still want to come and talk to the planning board about this because there's the need is more than just one building. The need is more than just 30 units of apartment housing in the community. If you want the community to be viable as a resort community, then there needs to be housing available for people who work here. Or businesses will just not be able to function.
Kathy,
I just had a question. So to Margaret's point, as far as putting in, like having a resort or somebody to have a master lease or the town or whatever, like a master lease, is that something that can be deeded in? Because tell me if I'm wrong, we don't know what the market rate is. And I think we're talking a lot about affordable housing and what does that really mean? And unless you quantify it with real numbers, it might not be affordable housing and it might not meet that need. But if you do, if there is a way to have, the resort and deed that in, and I don't know if that's possible. And
I don't know if that's something you deed in. I think what you'd look at, what you'd probably see is, for example, the resort would probably lease for a very long term, 5+ years. And then, would to provide certainty. And just to be clear, at least the terms become vague sometimes, but when I like to use the term, workforce housing, which is general housing that's more targeted towards mid-level workers, in our case, resort work, people who work for the resort. Affordable generally means something that it has some sort of subsidy and subsidized and is capped at a particular rate. And I think, like I said before, we wouldn't be at that stage. It's possible that could be part of this project, but we don't have any of that certainty right now. If we could incorporate that, we would look to incorporate that, and then you'd have a certain number of units that were guaranteed at a certain capped price, but we're not there yet.
Because to be able for your workforce to afford this, we don't know,
Yes.
because we don't know what the rent would end up being, because the market's gonna drive that in your cost of building. So I think that it's just a good way to look at this project, is that it's an apartment building that we're building.
We can and have looked at what our employees, for example, are paying for rents in other parts of down in Campton and Thornton and Plymouth and things like that. So we can get a sense of what folks can look at. You can look at, the generally accepted rule of thumb is people shouldn't spend any more than 30% of their income on rent. So we can look at what's the bell curve of employee wages that we have. What's the 30%, of that, so therefore you'd have rents, they would come in here. Then you look at the economics of it and say, okay, that makes the project feasible or not. And a lot of that comes down to, we'd have to look at what we think the rents would be and does that pay for the project?
Exactly.
Because if it doesn't pencil out, it won't get built. And that's why none of this stuff is getting built, not just here, but anywhere, is because it doesn't pencil out. So it's still very challenging.
Mike, go ahead.
But one of the things that you mentioned earlier on, which I think is fairly common in projects like this in resort towns, is that, and I'll pick on you just because you and I know each other very well, is that.
Well, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, but for example, and
It's not like
you,
your question, I
no,
wouldn't,
and as you just said, one of the things that you could do here is the resort could come to whoever entity's gonna own that and say, we will take, pick a number, 10 of these units, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and we will make a guaranteed lease of 5 years, which also helps make these things affordable. We're gonna take 5 years and we're gonna take these units. The town is gonna say, we're gonna take 4 units and take these units. The resort association, just to pick up.
Yeah.
All right. And that all helps you with affordability. And that also helps, for example, and we'll pick on the town because Mark's not here. We'll pick on the town and the town says, okay, fair market value of this unit is $3,000 a month. However, we're going to subsidize X employee $500 a month, or the resort is going to do it, or the resort association, or the Sean is going to do it up at the Coyote. That also makes all of these things more affordable to workers while not getting into affordable housing situations and all the credits that are, as you said, extraordinary, and I've been through. Very
challenging.
Very challenging, especially in a town like Waterville Valley. That is some way to get a subsidy that is other than through those very difficult to get credits, and helps guarantee construction, which I think is the other thing. The other thing that you have to be aware of, we have to be aware of. I don't know, some people in town are not excited about the look and feel of the villas of Waterville Valley. We have to make sure that that perception is avoided. You know what I'm saying? All right, so. Bill?
One of the things that we constantly struggle with at the planning board is market forces. And what does that mean? That's the power of money. And it's unfortunate that money generally wins.
Always wins.
And I fought against what you were referring to, the urbanization of Waterville Valley. But demand and forces of market are irresistible. You don't change these things. And although it would be one of the things that has occurred on several occasions is that when people fight against development, my answer has been, if you don't want the development to be there, buy the land. And if you think that if anybody takes offense at things, you would be amazed at the response to that statement. You don't want that development there, you don't want that building there, then buy the land. Pay the taxes and look at the trees. But otherwise, market forces drive everything. And unfortunately, money wins.
We saw an example of that.
Well, that's one of the problems. The planning board can't change that. There was another episode that took place where somebody said, "You're the planning board, you can do whatever you want." No, that is not the case. That the planning board cannot defeat development because money wins.
Can I just respond to that?
Go ahead.
Well, I do believe that at some point Village Condos maybe owned that part of the parking lot and sold it to the town. I don't remember that. Sold it to the ski area. Sold it to the ski area. That's just on point, but. So the villas or the new housing that went up are being sold for $1 million, as I understand it. Some of those units, right? So if we're talking about affordable housing, right? So what the woman, Catherine said, I mean, we can call a spade, right? It's an apartment building. Okay, so if the housing is going, those things are going for $1 million, the housing rate is gonna be out of control,
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
so let's, like, if we're saying money talks.
But how
then
is the
to
planning
young
board gonna
lady's
fix that?
point, For, like, I am a pro advocate for affordable housing, okay?
So am I.
But that's not, this doesn't guarantee that.
No,
So
But-
those are the proposals. The market in Rainy Town, that those things are going for over $1 million.
sure. But what
So-
I'm trying to say to you is that even though I'm like you, I favor certain things, but because I favor them doesn't make it happen. What makes it happen is money. And until there's to say, if you don't want the development there, then buy the land. And that has stirred a great deal of resentment, but that's the fact of life. That's market force. And, you know, you want affordable housing, aside from subsidies, you're not gonna be able to make it affordable in a place like Waterville Valley because the supply and the demand, and the supply of land is so low and the demand is so high. You know, the only thing that adjusts on that is price.
Right, so how is, so I guess I'm just confused on how that relates to this. It's the demand.
That's not a
If the
planning.
supply and
board.
demand.
It's a market, this is a market force project.
Not a planning board. so-
That's, yeah, that's not good.
Well,
Brooke, go ahead.
ultimately, no matter what, the apartment adds texture to the available options in the valley.
Hmm.
So you're not talking about exact prices, it's still offering options.
Yep.
It's always gonna come in under.
It's more of an option than here now.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't have to really talk about all the prices of what it will cost, it's just gonna add texture,
We got nothing to do with price, so
right?
it's not our
It's just
issue.
another option that's gonna sort of have different steps.
Correct. Anyone else? James, anything else?
Nothing else for me.
Okay, okay. I think we're gonna do one more question, then we're gonna call it, okay?
That's it, and I'll stop beating this dead horse, but I really think, as somebody, and I think Brooke can attest, that deals with the Resort Association and the employees in the valley. The level that we're looking for housing is the $15 an hour level. So you
It's
can.
not just you're incorrect. I'm sorry, you're incorrect. It's not just the $15 an hour worker. It's the salaried mid-level employee that's looking to live and work here as well.
I think like the Resort Association is looking for people that are going to do the work, like at the rec department, housekeepers, are we not?
Well, I think think it's more.
It's not an either or. It's
This thing is like
it's
the ones that are like the managers that are, you know,
Yeah.
they're gonna be here for a while, they want to settle in, they're looking at a career. But they're not making 15, but they're not really making enough, they're definitely not making enough to afford a, you know, single family
Right,
home here.
so this isn't gonna fix the lower
No, I think it's gonna
incomes.
hit the people that, I mean, I'm also a product of this, I live in Plymouth,
Yeah.
you know, so I couldn't choose to live here if I wanted to. So I think that's, you know, there's a whole group of people there that aren't the $15 an hour.
Right,
I mean, that's just mine.
yeah, no, that's fine, I think that we need to, kind of delineate the difference between the lower income people that need the housing and the upper management. If that's what you're gearing to, it's a totally different clientele. It doesn't change what we have to look at, but it definitely changes the noise levels and the, transient going back and forth kind of thing. That's just one of the things we're concerned about.
We'll have plenty more time to talk about this. This is just an idea right now, that's all it is, okay? Thank you very much. James, thank you very
I
much.
thank you for your time.
We skipped over the CIP. So we're gonna,
We have nothing to go there.
yeah, why don't we take a 5-minute break where we can get some water and empty some water.
Empty water, yeah.
Have what I.
Full guns.
My
No DVT.
biometric ring is telling me you gotta get up and stretch your legs.
Yes, no, that's they're doing the same thing, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I think you and I said.
I think I'm that perspective. but
Actually,
it's not necessarily- I love it.
I'm tired of the bullshit. That is.
Might still be
Okay, yeah, you're right about that. Well, I've listened to a lot sitting at this table. Well, you've heard a few of my railings. That's how people have attacked planning board in some, once in a while, meetings, but to say.
All of a sudden,
if
instead of
they come right
9,000
up to the
square
edge,
feet,
you're corrupt.
based upon a study that I had done,
You want to be offended?
just 3 acres outside.
You're being correct. But just out of sight.
Yeah, there is a difference between the two. And.
Outside of. Well,
You live Sunnyside, there are 20 condominiums, we're the only.
This,
people who live
this.
here.
And down the Snows Mountain Road.
You're outside of flood zone.
And I would say that 2/3 to 75% of those houses are not. Somebody never. And it's even worse if I go over to. the White Belt. Heskett Heights. Heskett Ridge.
Yeah, and there's that give and take here in the valley that's quite different.
Isn't that an interesting concept?
Anyway, for somebody who lives in Lincoln, which is.
Keep, you know.
She rents a 2-bedroom, 700 square foot home, $1,300, which she can barely. do. She's a medical assistant, she has a great job.
Yeah, and people, I don't know, you've heard me respond already to this, but people like, you were needed. So, well,
I mean,
oh,
Kath
come
chose
here.
to move here. You chose to move here from New York, like. Quite.
You a New Yorker?
It would require.
Via California.
Oh, no, no, that's what required, that's.
See, I didn't know that.
But it's we talk
In
about
city?
this concept. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And all of a sudden, we go a whole lot more.
Was that for you?
9,000 square feet. And it's a. Center.
Yeah, a long time,
Where in Manhattan did you live?
76 in Madison.
Well, yeah.
You know where Carlisle Hotel is?
My brother lives in Washington Heights.
Okay, that's
Before
somewhere,
out of the
yeah,
city.
it sounds like.
Literally almost the last subway stop.
Yeah.
You're still on Manhattan.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
That's the bigger thing.
But what it provides is an enormous benefit to the family.
Yes, it's a benefit.
They get the triple here. It's like, you're getting, it's.
Well.
You're
And
getting
it's
a
also
private
a safety in that, like, my employees in town, they don't have to travel
That's
in
complex.
during inclement weather.
If you wanna hear who it is.
And the problem.
I got scolded.
I've been waiting for it.
I think,
Jason.
But I will do it.
No.
It's in the conversation.
I think your comments are right on. Someone who grew up in on a, above a toy store, 3 flights up, mother, 2 kids, 1 bedroom. We weren't that certain class of people maybe, but I think we turned out okay.
That's the problem.
40 plus years.
That's why.
My dad loves logs.
Some of the people say it's there. So it's an.
I mean, I get it. I mean, yeah, there's no starting issue. This is not being built in their style.
For the transient.
Fill in the, even at market rate, people. I'm thinking too of like, the older couple just can't afford an $800,000 house and doesn't want to pick up a mortgage.
You're not, because I had my hand up. Boss, and you didn't pick me.
Just wants to rent.
You didn't want to hear what I had to say.
Apartment building, just wants to rent.
You didn't have one of those.
John,
That's my.
can I talk to you for 1 second?
Yeah, and I think he, you know, now he's got, if he goes forward, he'll have to go carry the ZBA on the setback. And he'll have to come to us for the parking.
How does the ZBA respond? Are they generally, I mean,
Well, they have a 5-part test they have to go through. And decide, and it has to meet all 5.
oh, it's not an either, it's like you have to meet 3 of these. You have to
No,
meet all
you have
5.
to meet all 5. Right, but you know, if he moves
Talk
that
about everything.
10 feet over, he could build it. I mean, he could put a restaurant in there, he could. It's a village commercial, again, yeah, now we don't sound full on aesthetics, and we can do a little bit on aesthetics. Yeah, it could be that, but I mean, aesthetics only get you stuff on my personal money.
Okay, if you have like 3 little towers, if you've got wind and sight lines, that might be a little,
Right.
that's also a lot more money. You're putting an extra wall instead of one.
Right, and how does that work with, especially up here, ice dams, all that kind of stuff, and start adding all those.
I mean, I tried to talk about it in September, if people didn't want to, you got a half hour here.
DPF will respond to.
Right, breaking into.
I'm very willing to
And
stop.
other sorts of stuff. They work hard to clean it up. And I don't think it's been an issue. I've not heard any reports, you know.
Here, I would say.
Yeah, that's not, they haven't come to us as an issue.
Anybody want to get back to the planning board?
Yes,
Yeah,
business?
let's do it. I would thank you for the 5 minutes.
Yeah. Me too. Leslie, excuse me, we're gonna get back to the planning board business. And you can stay, but,
Season.
okay. And we're gonna go right to the CIP.
And
Mark?
I'm gonna request that we have a special meeting about this because I'd like to have a detailed discussion about this information. You know, you've already been here over 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't want to try to keep you here for another hour. But this is probably
Very
a
important.
lot of information. The subcommittee's done a great job of preparing the plan, but you guys are supposed to be making recommendations to the select board. And I would rather have you do that when you're fresh. And I think by the time you do all of your other business, that you're never fresh when you go over this. So
Right, right.
if I could encourage a second meeting this month. And we can go through calendar or whatever and pick that.
Yeah.
But I think this needs a standalone meeting. And I don't know how Bill and Morgan feel about this, but
It'd be nice to have Rob here too.
Yeah, he's also part of the meeting. The committee.
And would it be nice prior to that meeting? If
you're
we
gonna get hard copies right now. and
That's
then
what
you're
I
gonna
was-
get
you're thinking
electronic copies of
that
it
you understand,
as
yeah,
well.
so it'd be really nice to see it before.
Yes.
Before we go any further, is the board okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Meet another meeting. Another meeting.
A special meeting. Now, everybody look at the calendar.
Now, before we go any further with that, do we want to do a morning or an evening meeting?
It's better for the-
And
From a staff standpoint, if it could be a morning meeting,
that's
that would be.
what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we can look at our calendars, or do you have a date?
I do not have a date in mind, but let's look at the calendar and let's pick it.
How about the
16th, no?
16th?
I can't do
Next-
16.
Everybody has one of their.
We do the
Well,
17th?
17th works.
17th,
Again.
okay,
That work for you?
Yeah.
Do you want 8 AM or what's better for town
8
employees?
AM would be awesome.
Could I ask you nine?
No. Okay.
Not 9, I'm sorry.
9 on the
9
17th.
on the 7th. Is that okay?
That's a
Okay,
Friday.
this is a,
It's a Friday,
Yeah,
a one topic meeting.
special meeting on the CIP.
We do this,
You have a
and
problem
nothing
with
else.
Friday?
Right,
Good,
we limit the time.
yes.
It's up to the chair.
It is, okay.
You can talk, you run the meeting.
9 AM on the 17th is up.
What is it?
9
9 AM on the 17th
Oh, we're
for a
doing 9
special,
a.m.?
special
Okay.
planning board meeting on the CIP.
Is everyone good with 9 a.m.?
Sure.
Margaret, you okay with that?
No, I'll be out of town, but I can zoom in.
Okay. All right. The,
Catherine.
But we'll get all the information right now.
so we can review it and we'll be ready to go. The 17th, 9 a.m. Okay, done. Done.
Busier now than ever before.
Okay, so there are two documents here. There is a capital projects listing for just this year with a committee rating or recommendation of either a high priority, medium priority, or low priority for each project. And then there is a multi-year plan. So this is just to give you a hard copy, and like I said, we'll also send out the electronic copy of it as
Thanks,
well. There is another document that will be attached to the electronic file that is a, oops, sorry. It's a 2-pager. This. That'll be a narrative description of each one of the projects for this year. Okay, so again, I don't know if there's anything that Bill or Morgan want to talk about right now.
No, I think giving everybody time to look at it and digest it would be great.
Great.
I mean, I guess just know that we met with every department head.
This, and we will, I'll make sure that all of the department heads who are
On.
Thanks.
There.
all of the we'll talk to the department heads and make sure that they can be here for the discussion.
Mark, could you send that out by email also?
I will, yep, you're gonna
Thanks.
get that, Nancy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Determined? Okay. Okay, sorry. Everyone wants me to. Okay, we're gonna look at this. The homework, we're gonna move on. And take care of that later. Some old business. How about Rich Rita, little update on?
I mentioned the one thing already, the select board worked on that relates to the planning board.
Okay.
That was the special event permit, so nothing more than that.
Okay. Mark, the road update, looks like you're doing a great job.
Road project is done, all the paving is finished. I don't know what the weather today, how that's gonna impact, but we are scheduled to get all of the lines painted on the new pavement on the 16th of November. That'll be weather dependent. But yeah, they're pretty much wrapping up, clearing out their yard at the conference center, clearing that out today. And finishing up a little bit of the edge work along the roads.
Will the paint field go down okay in this cold weather?
Well, that's what we have to talk to the painting company, but, we do want to get it marked in some fashion before the winter. Just
Okay.
rather not have a blank
Yeah.
road out there. It is supposed to, temperatures are supposed to moderate a little bit. So hopefully we can get paint there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Mark, I think you mentioned Tuesday that the top finish asphalt.
Yeah.
Is gonna be spring.
Yeah, so the pavement that is down is just the binder coat. They did not do the last 1.5 to 2-inch top coat. Just because of the weather and the fact that it was so cold. So they will come back and they will raise up the manholes and do that in the spring.
Got it.
So right now that's scheduled, weather dependent, to be done before Memorial Day.
Okay,
Excellent.
thank you. Moving on. Work group, the only reason why I left dark sky in there is because you guys said you were still looking for someone to help you out with the lighting consulting or something.
Yeah.
Yes, we did some of that. Well, Morgan did it.
Yeah, so are you continuing to do that?
Yes, we're trying to set up a meeting with a lighting consultant. Her name is Nancy. She's out in Vail, Colorado, and she has a whole team.
Oh,
We found them through, I forget what it's called, but they're based in Twin Mountain, New Hampshire, and they're a dark sky committee. Because there's a dark sky organization. I think they're one of the sub committees out there, groups. But anyway, he said unequivocally that this person was the best. So we're trying to set up a meeting now to discuss, and then if there is a way to move forward and figure out how much it would cost, as the select board has directed us to do.
Right,
Right.
so
Right.
some progress.
Dollars count. Bill said you signed it.
okay, good, that's all we wanted to know. Correspondence? Alicia? Nothing, no comment at all.
No correspondence.
Okay, great. Let's see, the town core group, Kathy, I believe you've been recently,
Nancy, I think is still on it, no, they haven't met, that I'm
okay,
aware of.
Nancy, do you have any, I'm sorry, do you have any information on that?
I think they met since I left town, but I didn't know that Jenny was not on the board anymore. But she might have attended the meeting. I did not, so I don't know what happened.
Okay,
I don't think Jenny's still on, so.
Who is,
All right.
who are the?
Kathy, can you tell her?
I
I don't know.
Nancy and then Wendy Rothberger.
Mhm.
I was
Select
to
board.
join- I was asked to be but we haven't had a meeting yet.
And there's some
And
business
Yeah, I think
represent
Tom,
Resort Association, Tom Gross,
Tom
Tyrell.
Gross and Tim.
Brooke,
Yeah.
Brooke,
James.
James.
James, yeah.
Wow.
We were gonna meet on the 14th of November, but I think it's getting pushed.
Yeah.
So,
did you have anything? Brooke?
Maybe we didn't miss anything.
Okay. Okay. Conservation Commission, I think that's me. So some really cool thing happened. The school put on this little fire prevention program. It was totally awesome. So they carved out a little trail behind the school, and a bunch of the students has been assigned to tell us about different things that happen in a forest if there's a fire. Different procedures that you do, put the water out, if there's no water available, how they do it, different plants that could be planted that are fire resistant, blueberry bushes, I didn't even know that. So I learned a lot of stuff there, but some of you had a chance to go, I hope you did. You did. It was awesome. Do you have anything else you want to say on that, or?
My blueberries, yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool.
About fire breaks, and they talked about different trees to plant besides blueberry bushes too that are.
That trail
Fungus.
is available for people to,
Welcome.
It's still functional.
the trail the trail is still functional and speaking from my other hat, it is truly amazing
Yeah, wasn't it?
what the kids, I'm always shocked at what the kids can do. But it was truly amazing and talking to the kids afterwards and everything else, which I try and do.
They
what
had
do,
little
how
groups
smart
of
they are.
people that would go through to each station and there would be two or three maybe at each station and the kids would just explain what's going on. But they did it themselves. They picked out whatever they wanted to pick out and they researched it and explained it to as we come around to look at it. But that was really, really awesome. And that's about all we have at this point in time until our next meeting. Okay. Calendar review, our next actual meeting is December 14 at
Yep.
8 AM. Everyone good with that?
Yep.
A regular meeting, right?
Mr. Secretary?
Yes, all in favor.
Figure out when I get back.
And then 11/17 for the special meeting for the CIP.
Yep.
And then public hearing on 12/13.
A lot going on.
Yeah,
Yep.
busy before town meeting.
So. Do I hear
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
do I hear a second?
Second.
Morgan, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very
Aye.
much. For that.
That's the button.
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you very much, Dara.
I was gonna call you Megan.
Thank you.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you, because I don't like it. But I know you have Megan.